Ah, still buffering. Could be that it didn't click through the first time. This last time it had a different response. Ah. Okay. All right, let's get rolling. Hi, my name is Scott Boehner. I am the director of the Ferguson Municipal Public Library. First of all, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in tonight and for caring about Ferguson. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our moderator, and our moderator will introduce our candidates. But first, I've been asked to give a quick update about the library. As most of you know, the library's front doors have been locked for the past couple of months while we focused our energies on online services like ebooks and audiobooks and online programs. But now we have a multi-stage plan for reopening that is based on science and data. We opened our book drops this last Tuesday, so we can accept whatever you have to return to us. We began contact-free curbside service on Wednesday the 3rd, and we'll be doing that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 2 to 6. Just park in the parking lot and follow the instructions on the sign out front. We don't know yet when we'll be unlocking the front doors because that's going to depend on what the trend lines are for infections and deaths in St. Louis County. I'm guessing it'll be weeks. The other thing to note, and this is a really big deal for us, is that we are going to be going overdue fine free starting July 1st, in part because this is our 90th anniversary. Okay. On to what we came here for tonight. Tonight, our candidates will be responding to questions that were emailed over the last week or two. But if you have more questions tonight, just log into YouTube and leave a comment. The candidates will have a chance to answer them through the YouTube page over the next few days. We are very fortunate to have the League of Women Voters to moderate this discussion. The League of Women Voters is a non-partisan organization that empowers voters and defends democracy. And thank you and welcome to everyone that we see on the screen tonight. But I want to start with a special thank you to our moderator, Kathleen Farrell.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, and on behalf of the St. Louis League of Women Voters and our host, the Ferguson Public Library, this forum is being live streamed on YouTube by the library. My name is Kathleen Farrell of the St. Louis League, and I'm going to be your moderator tonight. I want to thank our candidates and the library for making this happen. We're all working with new challenges during this time. This election is very, very important, and we've been working hard and doing all we can to bring the information that you want to get to choose a mayor. The two candidates as they appear in order on the ballot are Ms. Ella Jones and Ms. Heather Robinette. The League believes that one of the best ways for voters to learn about candidates and choose who they want to vote for is to hear them speak and to answer questions in a public forum. And we're really glad that Zoom and YouTube makes that possible. They're going to give their opening statements in the order that they appear on the ballot, with Ms. Jones going first, and then their closing statements with Ms. Robinette going first. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements. They're going to have a minute to answer each question. They have a right to speak to all questions, even if the question was initially directed to one candidate. And they're going to have 2 minutes for those closing statements. All questions in those forums, in this forum, were submitted to the League on their website by the public. Any additional comments, as Scott Boehner told you, can be submitted on YouTube. The timekeeper is Barbara Harris, also from the League. She's going to time all the opening and closing statements and the candidate answers. I've gone through all the questions. These are not League questions. These are all from the public. I've put some questions together which are similar. I'm going to make sure that each candidate has an equal opportunity to answer each question, and I'm going to enforce the rules. So without further time, let's start with what you came here to hear, and let's start with the opening statement by Ms. Jones.
Hello, everyone. I am Ella Jones, candidate for the mayor of Ferguson. I've lived in our wonderful hometown for about 40 years, and for the last 5 years, I have the pleasure of serving on the Ferguson City Council. I'm a widow and a mother of a wonderful daughter. I graduated from Missouri St. Louis with a degree in chemistry. I own my own business, and I have served 22 years as a pastor of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I love Ferguson and its people, and I believe that I am the right person to be mayor of the city. My focus is to make sure that our city remains stable and will deliver services at the expected level for the future. For each resident, each business, employee, and visitor to sincerely believe that Ferguson is a great place to work, a great place to visit, and a great place to raise their family. I will continue engaging the city to submit their 2020 census, because it's very, very important that we have great numbers for the 2020 census. We are in our 4th year of the consent decree, and I will work diligently with the staff to complete the consent decree. To accomplish this goal, Ferguson needs new leadership. They need a leader who is strong, has a vision, and willing to interact with all the citizens of Ferguson. Thank you.
Ms. Robinette.
Hello, everyone. I am Heather Robinette, running for mayor of Ferguson. I'm currently serving my 2nd term as Ward 2 councilwoman, and I have also served the last 3 years as mayor pro tem, which has given me the ability to lead the city council, actually practice being mayor approximately 8 or 9 times, and I've also led other business meetings and budget sessions when the mayor was not available. I've been a Ferguson resident for 16 years now. My husband and I moved here in 2004, bought a house and rehabbed it, and we immediately got involved with our neighborhood organization. 11 years ago, he and I started the Old Ferguson West Community Garden, and that was kind of my first foray into working with ordinances, as I helped put together the first community garden ordinance in the state of Missouri at that time. Our family has been involved in the neighborhood since we moved in, and we will continue to do so. As far as my professional background, I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Washington University. I later received my master's in information systems from University of Phoenix. I'm currently director of software architecture at AT&T, and I love my day job because it brings challenges every day and opportunities to collaborate. And I take a lot of what I've learned from AT&T and apply it to city business. I'm practical, pragmatic. I'm a natural problem solver and collaborator, and I look forward to being your mayor of Ferguson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start the first question with you, Ms. Robinette. And here's the first question. Several people have asked, describe the progress that the city has made on the consent decree. Where do we stand?
That is an interesting question to answer in a minute. So I think that we've had actually more progress in the last year than we have had prior to that. We have key positions put in place now. We have our new police chief. We have a consent decree coordinator, Nicole Barton, who is working directly with the monitor in the Department of Justice. And we have the data analytics consultant that is working to pull out the data that the DOJ needs. So we are not as far along as we had hoped, but I think that we're making really good progress, and we finally have traction. So I'm very positive about the next year and a half.
Hey, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Well, we have made a lot of progress. Commander McCall. He has worked diligently on the consent decree. We have Captain Dearworth. He worked on the consent decree. And within the last year, all the work that they have done, it allowed the new consent decree coordinator come in and enhance the work that they have done. Chief Armstrong, he has come in with some new ideas and applied some of those ideas to the consent decree. We are moving. We have the monitor, Natasha Tidwell. She is really working with the city and she wants to be fair with the city. So she is bringing the DOJ and the city together to work more cooperatively.
Okay, thank you. Here's the second question, and Ms. Jones, you're first on this one. If you had been mayor at the time, how would you have handled the Michael Brown situation differently?
Well, if I was mayor at the time, first of all, Mike Brown wouldn't have laid in the street for 4 hours. That was just unhuman. And in addition to that, the police department would have a protocol on hand for officer shooting. And they would have followed that protocol. So everything would have happened in an orderly fashion, in an orderly manner, and it wouldn't have been so much chaos. In addition to that, as mayor, I would immediately went to the news and explained what happened because social media blew it so far out of proportion. And as mayor, that would have been the first thing to do. Go to the media, keep it contained so it wouldn't have blown the way it did.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette?
So it's hard to put myself in that position. You know, I think social media was a big part of how it blew up so quickly. I think that if I had been mayor at the time, I would have tried to realize what the message was that we were trying to get out as a city. I mean, we've seen here recently that it doesn't matter what the mayor says or does, people react the way they react. But having everybody speak from the same understanding of what needs to be done and what will be done, that justice will hopefully be served and looked into, I think that message would have been something that I would have gotten out earlier. But I don't think that there was a script or anything for the previous or current mayor for him to follow. So I think he did the best he could with the information that he had.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette, on a related question. Several people have asked, you know, what the impact of meeting the requirements of the consent decree have been on the budget. And here's my question, which I think combines all their concerns, is how do you keep proceeding and making very good progress on meeting the requirements of the consent decree and yet balance the budget?
So I think that, you know, when the consent decree was signed off on, there was an agreement between Ferguson and the DOJ that it wouldn't exceed $1.25 million over 5 years unless the consent decree lasted longer than 5 years, which it looks like it may do that. Like I said before, the consent decree was signed before I was elected, but I had every intention to follow the consent decree and to come into compliance. And so I looked at every line item that could be looked at in order to make sure that we were balancing the budget, doing the best that we could while adhering to the consent decree.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
Well, with the consent decree, we knew going in that it was going to cost monies. And what we did is sit down, at least the finance director and the city manager at the time, and estimated the cost of the consent decree for year 1, 2, 3, and on to 5. And the first year, the consent decree went over budget. And we came up with we had to get a new monitor. And at the time, the budget has been balanced for the last 5 years that we have been working with a consent decree. And so we're going to continue to look at the budget, continue to take out things that we can eliminate from the budget, but we are committed to working through this consent decree.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Jones, on this next question. And what I'm doing is I'm grouping questions and I'm moving from questions about crime and those kinds of things and more specific questions about policies and programs. So you'll see me do that. This question is, what's your vision for the future of Ferguson, both in terms of residential issues and also commercial issues? Ms. Jones?
My vision for Ferguson is we have so many empty houses, and the goal is to work with the banks and the real estate companies and find first-time homeowners and put these houses back on the property roll. In addition to that, find funding, forgivable loans that we can use for the existing homeowners to keep their houses up. As for commercial, the West Florissant corridor needs our attention. There's over 30,000 cars pass on that street, and we must work with the West Florissant Business Association and bring business to West Florissant and continue to help the businesses that are on Florissant Road. We have to stabilize them and bring new business to West Florissant.
Thank you. Ms. Robinette?
So my vision for residential properties, I think is the same as most council members. We would like to see our empty houses renovated and, you know, new homeowners or landlords, responsible landlords renting them out to good tenants. And I think the Ferguson Neighborhood Improvement Plan or program is working currently with banks to look at just as Ms. Jones said, the forgivable loans and the ability to figure out how we can offer homes to potential homeowners. And as far as the commercial district goes, the West Florissant corridor has been in works for many years, and the city has partnered with Jennings and Delwood to make sure it's a consistent vision across the entire West Florissant corridor. And my hope is that the economic downturn right now does not hamper any of that upcoming development. And I hope that we had just talked about the potential to offer small businesses potential. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay.
Potential.
You're going to get another turn because a number of people were concerned about development on West Florissant. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette, and specifically, what specific things would you do to help expand productive business in the West Florissant corridor?
So I think currently, I mean, there is a plan in place for the majority of the West Florissant corridor from 270 to I guess 70, and those have been worked through, and there have been neighborhood organizations and focus groups telling what they want. Right now it's a sea of concrete, and they want walkable streets and the ability to cross the street and not get hit by cars. I think that overall, showing people what the vision looks like, and then enticing new businesses that want to be part of that growing model, that the beautification of that whole corridor, I think will be an easy sell once they see what's going to be there.
Hey, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Well, working with the West Florissant Business Association is the key, and helping them stabilize themselves on West Florissant, and talking to developers. You know, we have The Urban League is new on West Florissant. We have the Boys and Girls Club that is new on West Florissant, and we are excited about that. We're going to have a parkhead on West Florissant, but we need developers that are going to come in and have an incubator for entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs can go and develop some thoughts. And in addition to that, attract the businesses and let them know that Ferguson is a good place to have a business, and offer them some incentives to come here and stay here.
Okay, so we're going to move from specifically West Florissant to Ferguson in general. And a number of people submitted questions about what are your plans for economic development? I put them together, and what are two very specific short-term actions that you could take for economic development in the city as a whole? And what are two long-term economic development actions you could take? So two short-term, two long-term.
Is it my question?
It's your question. I'm
Okay,
sorry, Ms.
okay. Short term, the most important thing is reignite our businesses, our restaurants, the businesses, work with them to reignite. And in addition to that, short-term economic development is to help the businesses that feel like they're gonna have to close. Let's rally around them and have them open. Long-term annexation. We have a lot of unincorporated subdivisions around here we can annex, and that would increase our property and our population, where if we had 50,000 people in population in Ferguson, we could go to HUD and get our own money instead of going through St. Louis County. And in addition to that, that Target's build, not to Target, but the Toys R Us building, great incubator.
Okay, Ms. Robinette.
So I think short term, quite frankly, the focus should be on stabilizing our businesses that are currently in place, and those that barely made it through the unrest of 2014 and we're just getting on solid footing now due to the pandemic are hanging on by a thread. Making sure that the city is able to provide whatever means possible to allow them to continue to be a business is important. I guess another short-term action would be, while real estate is good, let's entice developers to get in and buy up some of the properties that have been sitting vacant for so long. And that leads into the long term, the development of vacant properties that we've seen done on Florissant Road, where one property then has lofts built on top. I think there's an opportunity to do that in several areas of Ferguson.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you again, Ms. Robinette, and this is a related question, and both of you have mentioned it, but a number of people want to know what specific actions you would take to grow the tax base. And you have mentioned, buying up those buildings and getting homeowners in. Would you like to add anything?
And this to me first?
Yes.
So what particular action? I think creating a process that enables individuals to buy up housing and develop it and turn it around to sell it to homeowners, I think would be in everybody's best interest. We have a lot of abandoned homes that are worth saving, and those that aren't, thank goodness we have in the budget tear down money for 10 a year. But yeah, I think having a process in place for developers to buy and turn over the housing to new homeowners is the best way we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Well, with me, I will work with the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods can develop themselves as a community development corporation. And that will give them an opportunity to go after some of these grants. And going after these grants, they can buy up the property in their neighborhood, rehab these houses, and then put them on the market. You know, when the neighborhood gets together and see that they want to stabilize their neighborhood and they put a stake in it. So once they buy these houses, they rehab them, they are going to look for quality people to put in these houses so we can increase our personal property tax. Ferguson right now is kind of upside down. We have more renters than we have homeowners, and our focus is to shift Ferguson back to more homeowners. We love renters, but it's homeowners that keep our neighborhood stabilized.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is a really interesting question, and I got it from two different people. How would you define, and let's start with you, Ms. Jones, the culture of Ferguson, and does it need to change, and if so, how? All in 1 minute, of course.
Okay. Well, Ferguson is a diverse community. And in that diverse community, you're going to have people who have different opinions and different ideas. So the culture of Ferguson right now is that we have people who think one way, people who think another way. But if we're going to move Ferguson forward, it becomes very important that we understand a basic concept that I learned when I was young. It's okay to disagree. You can agree to disagree. And our culture needs to come together. In order to move Ferguson together, we have to bridge that gap and become one Ferguson. And when we become one Ferguson, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish, and there's nothing that we cannot do, because we are a city that has a heart and that will be willing to work together.
Thank you. Ms. Robinette.
So the culture of Ferguson, it depends which block you're on, which street you're on, which event you're attending, which restaurant you're in. And that's one of the things I love about Ferguson is how diverse it is in so many different ways. And, you know, people think that the unrest of 2014 opened up the discussions of race relations, but Proud, people reaching out for unity and diversity, was an organization that started back in the 90s and had courageous conversations and bringing people to the table to have discussions that other areas wouldn't even think of. So I think that I love the diversity of the culture of Ferguson, and that's one of the reasons that I choose to live here and raise my children here. I cannot imagine living anywhere else, and I think that changes that needed to be made are being made through the consent decree. Otherwise, I just love being in a neighborhood that's very diverse.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to a group of questions about crime, about guns, about violence. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette. And we're going to start with a very specific one. I couldn't believe it, but I had 4 people who asked me about gunshots. 2 of them asked me if we had a number, if we knew how many there were in a year. But most importantly, they were wanting to know how does the city, how do the police respond to these? So maybe you could start.
So gunshots specifically?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that is a common occurrence all around Ferguson. I remember traveling to New York City last summer or the summer before, and it was weird for me to not hear gunshots every night. I mean, this is a nightly occurrence, and we get the police reports twice a day, and gunshots in various locations are called in every day. When people call in gunshots fired, the police do go look for evidence of any property damage or any casings or, you know, any evidentiary, whatever that they can take back. But oftentimes there's nothing to be found. Sometimes somebody's just out trying their new gun. We are seeing a lot of guns stolen from vehicles. So people lock your vehicles or lock your guns. But yes, it is an ongoing problem that I hear at every neighborhood organization meeting.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Well, gunshot is alive and well in Ferguson. However, some parts of Ferguson is serviced by ShotSpotter. And that ShotSpotter can pinpoint exactly where that gunfire is coming from. I remember in the Robert Shapiro area, we had a Forestwood and the Robert Shapiro area to meet, and they were talking about ShotSpotter. And at that time, they had pinpointed to one house, and to stop it, code enforcement got involved in everything, and they were able to move this person, encourage this person to leave the neighborhood. The police, when they go out, they do look for shell casings, and sometimes they find them and sometimes they can't. But I think ShotSpotter will help. And when our neighbors consistently call the non-emergency number and report where these calls coming from, that will help the police more.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on that. Do you think that ShotSpotter should be expanded? Is it effective? What's its status? Let's start with you, Ms. Jones.
Well, ShotSpotter should be expanded. It's in parts of Ward 3, but however, we need to expand it to the other areas that see the most shots fired at night. However, it's a good tool that the police department can use, but there's nothing greater than that neighbor taking care of their other neighbor and allow them to say, okay, you heard it, I heard it, the both of us call. And that will give the police department additional data to go through. But yes, ShotSpotter is a great tool to use. And I hope that in the near future, we can expand and have it all over Ferguson, where the areas are hearing the most gunfire.
Thank you. Ms. Robinette?
And I would disagree with Ms. Jones. ShotSpotter, we were lumped into a free trial for areas of Ferguson. And what ShotSpotter does is it triangulates the sound and basically pinpoints, I would say, like a couple football fields worth of where the shots came from. And based on police reports that we've been given, ShotSpotter, I'd say, I would guess 1 out of 100 that it was able to pinpoint where it was located. And the cost of ShotSpotter is so much. I think like $250,000 a year to expand it is what I recollect. To have 1 or 2 pinpointed, that's not worth the money. And so as Ella pointed out, neighbors calling in triangulates a much closer area for police to figure out where the shots came from.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette. We have a question about a very specific federal bill that was introduced by Representative Lacey Clay in 2019, just about a year ago. And it is called HR 3435. And what it does in essence is it encourages the states to allow local governments to develop and enforce more stringent gun control measures. What is your position on that, and why do you hold it?
As far as the city having stricter gun regulations?
Yeah, the ability of the city to do so, Ferguson.
I would say that if that worked on people who stole guns from vehicles, that would be great. I think that the gun rules that are in place right now for people who are gun owners and responsible gun owners, I think the rules are fine. It is the people who don't follow the rules that we have the most trouble with.
Okay, so does that mean that your position is that you're not sure what it would do, or I'm trying to get a sense of your position?
I'm saying that I don't know that the city could make something more stringent on gun owners that would help reduce.
Thank you. Ms. Jones.
Well, that particular bill, I believe it gives the local government an opportunity to pass ordinances about guns. And in addition to that, by putting it in the local hands of the local government, I believe that bill would enable them to go after certain federal dollars to enhance their programs, to make certain that local government is working to keep guns out of the hands of people who are not responsible. In addition to that, I do support that bill because it's within the local government that determines how we live. And by the House of Representatives giving that power to the local government, I think it will make a difference.
Okay, Ms. Jones, going to switch a little bit. Two people want to know if you would support turning over policing to St. Louis County. Why or why not?
No, I do not support turning our police department over to St. Louis County. The Ferguson Police Department has worked and working to be a police department that works with the consent decree, the Justice Department, and we are working diligently to improve our police department. I think we should keep our police department. No, I'm not for a police department going to St. Louis County.
Okay, Ms. Robinette.
I would say at this point, currently, I'm not in favor of moving our police department to county. However, as with any budget, the majority of what we spend money on is our personnel and our safety, public safety. The fire department and the police department are two of the biggest expenses personnel-wise. If we're in a position where our budget, we're not taking in as much sales tax in the future, there are a lot of budgetary constraints that we're faced with. It might be a monetary decision to move to county, but I don't see that happening right now.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you this time, Ms. Robinette, and I'd like to give credit to Boy Scout Troop 608, who sent me a very long list of questions, and a number of them were about crime. So I want to ask one of their questions, and other citizens as well asked this question. What specific things would you do as mayor to try to decrease crime? Violent crime, theft, drug trafficking, what specific things would you do?
So thank you to the Boy Scouts. My son is an Eagle Scout, and I'm surprised that didn't come from their troop just to trip me up. Just lots of questions from them. But as mayor, what I would do to decrease crime, I think by engaging our neighborhood organizations, the power of thwarting crime is in people watching out for each other. I know a lot of blocks are using Ring and promoting that and getting discounts to get Ring installed on properties. But quite frankly, the best tool we have is to engage our citizens and make them aware, especially those who are working from home or are senior citizens, to watch every day what's happening that shouldn't be happening right outside your front door.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones?
Well, I have to believe if you want to stop crime, give the man a job. Come up with jobs and good paying jobs that will stop some of the crime, especially our youth. Come up with programs, not just for one part of the city, but all over the city. Work with the Boys and Girls Club. Keep more of our children off the streets, the YMCA, and teach them how to be good citizens. In addition to that, neighbors helping neighbors. There's nothing like a neighbor watching out for another neighbor. But however, to get rid of some of this youth violence and gangs, we must find jobs. And that's the only way we could stop some of these bullets.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Jones. Two people wanted to know about the enforcement of traffic violations. Both of them were concerned that we weren't doing enough of it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, traffic is a problem all over the United States, and in Ferguson, people are running the red lights, they're running the stop signs. However, we need our traffic unit to be in full force. When they see the police out, they are going to slow down. Our traffic unit, they're working diligently. I see them parked on different lots, and when people see them, they slow down. So it's just working with the police department, getting traffic slowed down. And then these drivers right now, they driving, I call them pandemic drivers, because nobody's on the road and they feel like they can drive 100 miles an hour. People need to slow down, stop playing so many video games, and realize that whatever they do when they are behind the wheel, that they are responsible not only for their lives, but someone else's life.
Thank you. Ms. Robinette?
So I would say speeding is one of the biggest complaints we get at every neighborhood organization meeting. And, you know, people passing on Elizabeth, speeding on Suburban, on Chambers. I mean, how many accidents we've had. Quite frankly, we have recently learned that the radar in our police vehicles is not up to speed, so to speak, and can't be used to write a speeding ticket. So in this next budget, Chief Armstrong has asked for $12,000 for 7 radar guns that can be changed in and out of different units, and especially for the traffic unit. So my hope is that we are looking to pull people over for speeding. I'd like for people to think that we were just like Calverton. Nobody drives into Calverton and doesn't step on the brakes. So I would like Ferguson to be known for no speeding.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette. A number of people asked, what specific measures would you as a leader, if you were mayor, endorse and support to increase the collaboration between the community and the police? Of course, people don't want to come forward and say they've witnessed a crime or cooperate. What specific things would you endorse and support?
Well, I think that, I'm sorry, did you finish?
Yes.
Thank you. I think there are current measures in place to assist the community with police. You know, there are avenues for if somebody doesn't want to report something, we have a citizens review board that can take complaints against the police, and the police department is actually reaching out to more neighborhoods and community members to involve them and engage them. I think what I'm seeing being put into place and the actions that Chief Armstrong and his staff are doing, I think are actually building relationships and showing that community policing is possible. So I don't know that there's anything I would do as mayor above and beyond what is currently working and growing.
Hey, Ms. Jones.
Community policing is very important. Not only do we have police attending Samaritan Feet, interacting with the children, Unity Weekend, interacting with the people giving out backpacks. However, when the police is in the neighborhood, sometimes they could get out their car and just speak to someone. That would encourage people to and establish a relationship with the police, communicate with the police. They don't have to zoom through the neighborhoods, but if they will get out their car, if they see a group of kids standing on a corner, don't approach them in such a way that is threatening, but ask them, hey, what's going on, fellas? What's going on? And children love for grown folks to talk to them in a nice manner. So getting out their cars, being more active in the neighborhoods, and not only coming to the neighborhoods just to file a report.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Jones. What have you done to build a positive relationship in Ward 3?
Okay, in Ward 3, to build a positive relationship, I interact with all the people. I walk the ward, I talk to the people. I work with Councilwoman Fran Griffin on several projects she has. In addition to that, we are collaborating on a park that's going in Ward 3. All the monies have been donated. The city doesn't have to pay for anything. The equipment is already purchased. It's sitting in the warehouse, Ferguson warehouse. And because of the pandemic, just when we were getting ready to get people to volunteer to build the park, the pandemic hit. So people are calling right now and say, okay, when are we going to start getting the park together? And I've been over there and the kids are playing on the ground without playground equipment. So we are looking forward to having a great time building that park in Ward 3 for the residents.
Okay. Ms. Robinette, what have you done to develop a relationship in Ward 3?
So part of Old Ferguson West encompasses a portion of Ward 3. And in fact, our other Ward 3 councilman, Byron Fry, lives in our neighborhood that our neighborhood organization is part of. So, you know, we've been working with Ward 3 since I moved here. As far as I helped clear away some of the stuff at the park where Ms. Jones is speaking about. However, the neighbors didn't buy in, and there are issues with who's going to build a fence, and the equipment that is sitting in the warehouse with nowhere to go. It's kind of like buying paint before the walls are built. So with a school playground just a couple blocks away, I think that this park is going to have a hard time coming to fruition.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette, and we're going to move to a different topic. And this deals with very specific improvements in the city. Lots and lots of people wrote questions about how you make property owners and landlords responsible. A couple of them mentioned a program that the city has that I got to go read about, and that is the exterior appearance program. Here's the question. How can you do more to make them responsible? And do you think that this program is going to reach that goal?
So I guess the question is just pertaining to exterior appearances or responsible landlords? Well,
it's both. It's, you know, how do you get people to maintain their properties? And then, you know, is this exterior appearance program part of the solution?
Well, I think I get phone calls and emails throughout the week, and neighborhood organization meetings, which unfortunately we're not going to right now. Exterior appearances and problems with property owners is often a hot topic, and I take several of those issues back and have the city help us figure out how to deal with it. And sometimes that involves the city inspector going out and figuring out if it needs to be fixed, if it's a lawn that needs to be mowed. And I think that with FNIP looking at some loans for homeowners, I think this is something that we can work with homeowners and get their property up, because a lot of times it's elderly residents that can't get it done or can't pay for it. So I would look to the neighborhood organizations to help us work with the individual property owner and come up with creative solutions to make that happen.
Okay, Ms. Jones?
Well, exterior is a big question with seniors. And I've worked with Home Depot to come in and help seniors do painting, cleaning their gutters, putting the new bushes around their house. And then once we enlisted Home Depot, we find that other people from the various homes around that house that's not looking too good will come out and help. So it becomes important that neighbors help neighbors. And in addition to that, it becomes very important that we understand that landlords do have a responsibility, and most of them are absentee. But when we put code enforcement there, they will come back and fix up their property. But that's why we need to go to more homeowners, because homeowners seem to take better care of their property.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with this question for you, Ms. Jones. How do we put more teeth in those enforcement of codes?
Could you repeat the question?
How do you put more teeth? How do you make that enforcement of the codes more effective?
More teeth. You want more teeth in
Yeah.
the code?
Well, the question asker wants to know.
Yeah, to put more teeth in the code. When you send a code enforcer out, they either write you a ticket or they try to give you an opportunity for you to clean up your property. So it becomes that person who owns that property to want to be a good citizen and want to live in harmony with their neighbors to keep their property up. But the code enforcer will come out and write you a ticket and give you X amount of time to get that property back up to code.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette?
I believe currently there aren't any teeth. Yes, there's the ticket that can be written, but there's a limit to how much can be charged. And so somebody who is facing a $5,000 repair will opt to pay a $200 ticket and let it go for another year. So I think that we need better legislation to allow our code enforcement to make people fix what needs to be fixed.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette, we're going to start with you, and we're switching topics, and we're going to talk about the Office of City Manager. I had a number of questions about this, and let's start with this one. What are the city's plans to hire the city manager? And what characteristics would you look for in a good city manager for Ferguson? Ms. Robinette?
So, I'm sorry. Okay. As far as hiring a city manager, we currently have an interim city manager in place. And I believe that what he brings to the table, he's provided a lot of good hiring practices that have put us on the right path for the compliance with the consent decree. And quite frankly, I know Ms. Jones opposed him to have an extended contract, but when one of our council members made a motion to put out a new search for city manager, Mrs. Jones did not second the motion, so it died on the table. As far as what characteristics for a city manager, they're going to walk into a lot. I mean, we have a consent decree, we have budget constraints that are above and beyond other cities' constraints. We have economic downturn that we're not going to know what's going to happen for the next couple of years. So I would hope somebody seasoned and capable.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, you want to respond to that, please?
When we first went to the interim city manager, at that point, I did vote against his contract to be interim city manager because of the things that was reported in the DOJ report about that particular city manager telling the police to ramp up tickets and getting more monies from the young people, especially the African American people, that they were stopping. When his contract came up again, I still voted against it. I'm looking for a city manager who's not only a leader, but also a people person, not only could crank out numbers, but understand that all the taxes that comes in the city of Ferguson, it comes from people. Without people, you can't have taxes. And so that person has to be considerate of the taxpayers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, we're going to switch topics and we're going to be talking about what a number of people wrote questions about, and that are the divisions in the community. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Jones, and here's the first question. What have you learned since you've been on the council about social injustice and inequality that you didn't know before you served?
Well, I knew all that before I got on the council because I live it every day. The injustice is what I see when I go to Ward 3 and look at that underserved community and look at the abandoned houses. That's an injustice. It's an injustice when low-income families have to live in these apartment complexes that these landlords or these owners of these apartment complexes don't give a hoot about the people. So social injustice and injustice, I've been around it all my life. And my goal, and it has always been my goal, and my life work is to work and help people. They need equity, and they need people who are going to not give them a handout, but show them a better way of living.
Thank you. Ms. Robinette?
So I would have to say that I've learned quite a bit about social injustice and inequality. I didn't live it as Ms. Jones did, but it was painfully made aware, certainly after many conversations right after the unrest. I honestly was not aware of just the systemic problems St. Louis had, the country had overall, how multiple systems were working against the African-American community. So, when banks were denying loans and, people were pushed to certain areas, that was an eye-opener for me. And so I hope that what I've learned and what what my children have learned through this too, that we can help create a better community for our residents currently and our residents in the future.
Thank you. We're going to start with the second question, and it's not easier with Ms. Robinette. What would be the first specific thing you did if you were elected mayor to reach across the racial divide in your community?
I don't know that there's anything specific that I would do that I'm not already doing. I'm involved in the community in a number of ways, and that's why I live here. I like the diversity. My team at work is very diverse, and with diversity comes different thought processes, and that's how we grow. If we hear our own echo chamber, we never learn anything. So I don't know that there's anything different that I would do that I'm not currently doing.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette, or excuse me, Ms. Jones, would you like to answer that?
Well, the first thing I would do, we have an anthropologist that live here. We have a lot of psychologists that live here. We have physicians that live here. We have history professors here. I would develop a task force and get with that task force and come up with ways that we can hold different conversations, courageous conversation. Yes, we've done it in the past, but this would be different simply because we won't have to reach out, we'll reach within. You can, if there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can't do you no harm. So it's best to work with the people we have who are teaching it and have them to come and work with the city to move this conversation forward so everyone would be able to understand and communicate with one another.
Okay, Ms. Jones, here's another one for you. What specifically would you do as mayor to increase your citizens' access to medical care, to healthy food, to the services that they need?
Well, one thing I am doing right now, I work with the Metro Market Bus, and they go to what we call an area where they go and they bring fresh fruits and vegetables. During the pandemic, the Metro Market Bus cannot bring the bus out, so they bring the veggie bus out and they packages all this fruit and vegetables, and we go out every Friday giving them out to senior citizens. As far as healthcare, we need that Medicaid bill to pass August 4th, so everyone will be entitled to healthcare, even if they are working a job. In addition to that, diaper service, bring more diaper service here. We had a doctor here today, Dr. Holmes. She's willing to work with the low income people. So there's a lot of things we could do, bring doctors in, psychologists in, nurses in.
Thank you.
More food. Thank you.
Ms. Robinette.
So while I appreciate Ms. Jones' ideas, that's not really the job for the mayor to do. As mayor, the biggest thing is to lead the meetings and bring consensus among council members. Medical care and food access is great for our community involvement, our churches, our non-for-profits, but that's not the job of the mayor. We have a community garden. That's great. That's not what the mayor is about. So I don't think that's an appropriate question for what would you do as mayor, is my response.
Okay. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette, and specifically when we're talking about nonprofits and churches, two people have asked about what could the city do more about the homeless situation in your community?
And that's a very great question that I think all of us have grappled with quite a few times. The city is not equipped financially to deal with the homeless population. I mean, St. Louis County and St. Louis City have a hard time addressing it. There are nonprofits in Ferguson. Warm 643 is one that I've contributed to, keeping the homeless warm and fed in the winter. There are other entities that working for the social good, but it's a problem that can't be solved by a small city government. So working with United Way and other entities is probably the best that we could do as a city for our homeless residents.
Ms. Jones.
Well, we have a ministerial alliance here that they are working with other nonprofits, but the goal is to get all the municipalities cooperating and working for the common good, enlisting the support of St. Louis County. St. Louis County has a human services division, and getting with them and helping them to come out and work with the municipalities and see how we can combat this homeless problem. Until we start working together and cooperating, then we just going to shift the homeless from Ferguson to Jennings to Delwood and on, but only when we can collaborate and come together and work with the nonprofits, work with St. Louis County, we can come up with a solution.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, we're going to turn to specific infrastructure projects. And a number of people are concerned about the quality of Ferguson's roads and streets. What specifically would you support to improve them?
Well, right now we have 2 STP projects going on to fix some roads. Every year we get a community development block grant, and it's $155,300. And those dollars are used to fix street into moderate to low income. And we continue to chip away at it. The only way that we can really fix all of the streets, our public works director, he has given us a chart. He have a rating on each street. So we'll have to look at that a little bit closer. Even though the budget has been cut for street repairs, we still have to look at it a little bit closer and see how we're going to fix a lot of these streets.
Ms. Robinette.
So I would echo a lot of what Ella just referred to. The budget has been cut, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do as much for streets as we can or we could before. But I think that, you know, where there is money and where there are cost-effective alternatives to patching and filling potholes, our public works director has been looking into that. We're going to try to do the best that we can with the funds that we have at hand. And it's going to be a problem because a lot of our streets are terrible. So I'm bringer of doom and gloom on that one. I wish we had more money to fix streets, but we don't right now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette, you're next. A number of people would like to know what about the historic downtown district outside the garden, the flower garden, which they commend. They're concerned about that quality of that space. What would you do?
I'm sorry, I missed the historic.
The historic downtown area.
Mhm.
They talk about it. They say there's a wonderful flower garden there, but there's other things that need to be addressed. Do you have thoughts about that?
So without specifics, I don't know what they're actually referring to. I know the farmer's market was, it was held at Victorian Plaza. And I know that there's a, what is that? The water fountain that's in, that needs repaired, but I don't know that there's any, you know, nobody's looking to repair that because there's no gatherings there at this point. As far as the historic downtown district, I mean, I don't know of anything specific that I can speak to.
Okay, maybe they're watching and will write a YouTube comment.
Okay, and I will check those comments. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Jones?
Well, in Victoria Plaza, I believe there is a flower area that sits to the back, and it needs to be groomed. And if we could find some citizens who love to plant flowers and get them together to beautify that, that would be great. The downtown historic area, it still needs some tender loving care. We have some buildings that need to be refaced. It's people working together. If they want a beautiful community, we are going to have to work together, roll up our sleeves and make this thing happen for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to start with you, Ms. Jones. Let's get now we're moving into questions about your preparations, both of you to be mayor, and some specific questions about that. What is your experience with the budget process in terms of making a budget, reviewing a budget, et cetera, et cetera? Ms. Jones?
Okay, with the budget process, the city manager is over the budget, and each department heads come up with the budget and work with the city manager to present the budget to the council. We go over the budget line by line, looking for ways to, I guess, cut and looking for ways that we're going to balance the budget. It's important that we pass a balanced budget. So just working with the city manager and going through the B2s to make certain that we don't miss anything and that we come up with a balanced budget.
Ms. Robinette?
So the budget is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I spend a lot of time on it prior to our budget meetings with council and city staff. In fact, we had a finance director who put together a budget a couple of years ago, and it was so poorly put together. It was embarrassing that a director of finance would put something out there like that, and he was subsequently let go. So I look and scrutinize at everything in the budget. I mean, we're looking at a 1.3 million deficit in this upcoming budget. I don't know that we'll be able to balance it. We're working hard, but it's funny going line by line. In I'd say 12 hours of budget conversations, I don't know that my opponent has said 3 things about the budget. So this is an area that I think that I am very well versed and understand it, and I hope to lead.
Okay, thank you. What would you do, Ms. Robinette, to increase youth engagement in city affairs?
So we have the Ferguson Youth Initiative that started several years ago. I was part of the initial launch of FYI, and I currently serve as the council representative of the Ferguson Youth Advisory Board, and that empowers students to high school students and junior high students to be a part of city government, to make decisions on behalf of youth, to engage other youth. And I also served on the board of FYI for 4 years. It's important for youth to have an outlet, to have a safe place to congregate, programs in place. And I think the Ferguson Youth Initiative is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I will support as long as I am here.
Hey, Ms. Jones?
Youth engagement is very, very important, and FYI is one of an outlet that the youth can use. We have the Boys and Girls Club here that we can send youth up there, the teenagers, for them to go through different programming there. We also have the YMCA that has youth engagement and programming. And I'm up there at the Y. I'm one of the board members, and I work with the youth. I work in the garden with the youth, go on field trips with the youth. So it's just engaging all of the youth all over the city in different programs to enhance their ability to grow.
Okay, thank you. So we're almost done with our questions, but before, I'm going to ask you a yes or no question. And we're going to start with Ms. Jones. I got 2 questions asking me if both candidates would just say yes or no. Have you filed a report with the Missouri Ethics Commission? Yes or no? Ms. Jones?
When you say file the report, we have to file a
campaign report, campaign finance.
Oh, I file a campaign finance report all the time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Robinette?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to go to closing statements, and we're going to have one last question, but a lot of people ask questions that I think belong addressed in your closing statement. So I'm going to give you some ideas of those. What is your leadership style? How can you get the council to work together when they have very different points of view? Why are you best equipped to get the citizens of Ferguson to come together? How do you make sure that you're really non-partisan? Those are the kind, what in your education and background makes you the best qualified candidate. So I'm just mentioning those because people did ask about that, but I think that belongs in a closing statement. But here's my last question before we go to those. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to give my closing statement, give you just a minute to work on your closing statements, and then we'll have those closing statements. And Ms. Robinette, you're going to go first with those. Fair enough?
Okay.
Okay. Here's the last question. And now I've forgotten who it's Ms. Jones, you go first. Is that right? Okay. What do you think the best quality of Ms. Robinette, your opponent, is? What's her best quality?
Her best qualities, she loves her family. And that's very, very important to me. Family is always first. And in addition to that, she's a very, how would I say, quiet person, put it that way. She's a quiet person. So those are the qualities I find in her that are good.
Ms. Robinette, how about you?
I would say Ms. Jones' best quality is her church work, her community work. You can tell she's a preacher, and she does preach from time to time. But I think her church work is probably her best quality.
Okay, thank you. I hope everybody has noticed we've gotten through over 30 questions
Wow.
in an hour and 15 minutes. And I think that you can answer a serious question in a minute. And if only all of our leaders at all areas of government, all levels of government, had the kind of civil discussion that we had tonight to try to answer what citizens wanted to know, we'd be better off. So I want to thank you, both of you, for participating in this. And I want to thank everybody who submitted questions and who are tuning in tonight for making this a successful event. And particularly to Scott Boehner and the Ferguson Library. He worked and worked to make sure that we did this. If you found today's forum to be useful, think about joining us and becoming a member of the League of Women Voters. This is what we feel is really important. We have about 500 members, and they're volunteers, every single one of them. We have one full-time staff member and one part-time staff member, and that is it. So the voter's guide, all the things we do, the advocacy that we do, we're nonpartisan, but we do take positions on issues. I think you should join our ranks, or make a modest donation if you appreciate what we do. For this election, you can get the information you need on candidates and ballot issues by going to vote411.org, that voter's guide, where we had over 1,000 candidates and 150 ballot issues. And as somebody who worked on this for days and days and days, it's a very good quality of information. You can also just put in your address and your specific ballot will come up. The polls will be open on Tuesday, June the 2nd from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Please make sure you know where your polling place is ahead of time because there's been some changes. So if you got that postcard in the mail, you should look there or look it up ahead of time. Some have changed. If you need to find out where your polling place is, call ahead. You can call the St. Louis Board of Elections at 314-615-1833. If you have difficulty on election day, you can call the Election Protection Hotline. The League is part of a coalition to help anyone who has any questions about or any problems voting. That number is 866-1866-RVOTE. But it's also on the League of Women Voters website. Just go there, and if you have any difficulty, do that. Here's my challenge. If people didn't vote with an absentee ballot, make it your business to bring 2 people to the polls or make sure you get there. This is a very important election for your community. Please get out and vote. Thank you very, very much.
Are we going to closing statements?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're going to start with you, Ms. Robinette.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters. This was an unprecedented campaign cycle, and for you guys to figure out how to put on a candidates forum thank you very much. And Scott Boehner from the Ferguson Library, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'll try to address the questions that you asked in closing statements. The leadership style that I bring to the table is collaborative. That's how I work with my team. That's how I've worked with council. That's how I've worked through issues in our neighborhood organization. I solicit input from people that I don't normally agree with even, because I want to hear the diversity of thought. That's how we get to better decision making. And for the council to work together, I do have the support of the majority of council, just by very nature of that's just how I work. I include everybody. I make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. As far as bringing citizens together, since I've served on council, I have listened to every single person who has gotten up to speak in public comments. I've read every email. I've listened to voice messages. And I don't discount them, even if I don't agree with them. I think it's very important for me to hear what everybody has to say, because that helps me arrive at a better decision. This is completely nonpartisan. I mean, Ferguson is nonpartisan completely. And I don't even show how I vote on my reports that I file through the NEC. And as far as my educational background and whatever background, what that brings to the table, I'm just a problem solver. I'm an engineer at heart. I want things to be solved, but I'm also, I have a lot of empathy, and I listen, and I think those two coupled together will make me a great mayor for Ferguson. So I encourage everybody to come out and vote on June 2nd and vote for Heather Robinette. Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
My leadership style is what is called a servant leader. In order to lead, I serve, and I encourage other people to develop their skills. I work with people on a macro level. I don't believe that you have to always follow people to get them to do something. When you encourage a person and give them a platform to grow, they will blossom. And in addition to that, working with the community, I have people who call me all the time. I go to dance recital, I go to weddings, I go to funerals. I don't believe that I should live apart from the people, because the people chose me to be in this position, and I serve the people. And when people, I have come into where people have a lot of disagreement, we sit down and we talk about it and come up with a good solution. I am a problem solver. My degree is in chemistry, and you have to know how to mix various chemicals together that you don't blow yourself up. So, and it's just like people, and you have to understand different people personality and be proactive when you talk to that person. I ask that when you go to the polls, or if you have already voted absentee, that you have voted for Ella Jones. If you need a ride to the poll, feel free to call me at 314-795-7295. We will have someone pick you up and take you to the polls. It is very, very important that we work together.
Thank you. Scott Boehner, do you have any final words from the library?
Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for participating. This was great. I appreciate it.
It was.
Thank you very much, and good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
All right, I'm going to turn off the live stream now.
Okay.
Live stream's not off yet. And